Good afternoon and welcome to our Midday Mull for Friday the 26th of June. This is a bit of a follow-on from yesterday where we looked at the wonder of the scripture and the spread that we have and the unity that there is. And again, seeing how Isaiah and Matthew have the same themes, but a further step of just saying we must never take just little bits of scripture. We have to read the whole of it. So in Isaiah 58, the prophet's talking about true fasting and people complaining that God's not listening to them. And God says, but when you say you fast, but your fasts are completely wrong. And he says the following in verse 6. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke? To set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe him, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. And so you have this social imperative to look after the poor. God says, this is what I'm looking for. And in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus picks up the same idea. So, he says in verse 2, when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do, but when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So clearly Jesus is saying we need to be giving to the needy. And our religion needs to change society. Now, if that's all it says, we're talking about essentially a political manifesto. But Jesus continues and says in verse 5, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. And then you hop to verse 16, when you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do. And so Jesus isn't only talking about giving to the needy, he's also talking about praying and fasting. And likewise, if we go back to Isaiah, yes, he does say, look after the poor and the undo yokes of injustice. But in verse 13, he says, if you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath, and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you'll find your joy in the Lord. And so here he's talking about religious duties, keeping the Sabbath holy. And if we have one and not the other, we are lopsided. So if you only have the religious duties, you become an irrelevant little holy huddle. If you just concentrate on the social dynamic, you become essentially a political activist. And as Christians, we need to be doing both. We need to have them together. It's not one or the other, it's both and. And so we need to work on our religious life, on our praying and our fasting and our keeping the Sabbath and worshipping. And as we do that, our spirits will be fed and God will send us out into the world where we go out to make a difference. We need to have both. And so I pray that as you read the scripture, you'll read the whole scripture. You'll let it all speak to you to shape your religious life so that God can use you to shape our communal life and make the world a better place. Be blessed.